Good morning, friends. Uh, good morning from Vietnam. It is evening in America, and I welcome you to our Monday evening Zen practice. Um, looks on my watch like it is on the hour. So 7 o'clock in the morning here is 7 o'clock in the evening in New York City. So we're going to get started. But again, I'm from my laptop. I think I've got it worked out with this new streaming system that I have. But I apologize in advance for any of the hiccups we might have going on. Yeah, so without further ado, that bright light just made it a little bit brighter in here, but that's okay. Uh, we will get started with our liturgy and meditation. So, that might be a little hard to see, but hopefully you can see it and follow along with us. All right. I pay homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. I pay homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. I pay homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. And the three refuges. I take refuge in the Buddha. May all sentient beings understand the great way profoundly and bring forth the Bodhi mind. I take refuge in the Dharma. May all sentient beings deeply enter the Sutra treasury and have wisdom vast as the sea. I take refuge in the Sangha. May all sentient beings form together a great assembly, one and all in harmony. And for the Bodhicitta prayer. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Enthused by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence I generate the mind for full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Now we will do the 6 perfections. As bodhisattvas, we seek to practice generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, and wisdom. Okay, so now we will have our first 15 minutes of seated meditation. And I think I'm more prepared this time than I have been. If I can get these things to share right, I think that's helpful. Okay. Okay, folks, it is now time for us to chant the Gata on the opening of the sutras. So let me try to share my screen again real quickly. All right. Oops, too small. Maybe not any better. Okay. I'm still learning to do this on my laptop, and I'm going to be doing some traveling this winter, so it's important I figure this out. Okay, Gata on the opening of the sutras. This Dharma, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, is rarely encountered even in hundreds of thousands of millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, hold and maintain it. May we completely realize the true mind of all Buddhas. All right. Sit back, grab yourself a cup of tea. Let me make this work out a little bit better. Maybe like that. And let's talk about the Dharma for a little bit. So when the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and came to his realization, his ultimate enlightenment, he came up with, realized that the path to end suffering was the Noble Eightfold Path. And he included that as the fourth noble truth, that there is a way to end suffering. And the way to end suffering is by living the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Noble Eightfold Path, as I've said to you before, is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And so then over the next 45 years or so, the Buddha went through many examples and teachings on how each of these can be lived. But today I want to talk about the first one, right view. Perhaps one might consider it the most important because it sets us off on the path. And yet we view the Noble Eightfold Path, usually we view it as a wheel, and that is interconnected with all the other spokes on the wheel, the spokes being the individual elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. But we start off with right view because right view is what sets us on the Buddha's way. So for those of you who watched my Zen Minute that I did earlier today, I bought a new book, and probably do that way too often. But I bought a new book by Thich Nhat Hanh, and this one is called Beyond Self, Teachings on the Middle Way. And in this book, he makes it very clear that following the middle way, practicing non-self and non-duality is the key to right view and the key to eliminating suffering. And so while I read the sutra in today's Zen Minute, while I read the sutra on the middle way that he included in there, there were so many good quotes that are just nuggets to chew on. And I wanted to share some of those today because following the middle way is not just about life or death. It's not just about exist or not exist. It's about not choosing extremes in life. It's about non-attachment, even non-attachment to views. And I think Thich Nhat Hanh does a great job of describing this non-attachment to views and advising us, and it's very hard to do, mind you. We all have opinions. I told you a few weeks ago, when I drive down the road here in Vietnam and people are driving on the wrong side of the street coming right at me, and it is just a normal part of life, I am attached to my views that that is totally wrong. And they're putting so many people at risk by doing so. And it becomes a constant point of mindfulness for me to stop being judgmental, stop placing my Western driving values on another people in another culture. And it's because me, like all people, it's hard not to be attached to views, right? And yet that's what the Buddha wants us to do, to alleviate our own suffering as well as the suffering of others. We have to not be so attached to our views. And as Thich Nhat Hanh describes in his book here, that's not necessarily the difference between right view and wrong view, because that's very relative. In an absolute sense, the only right view is no view at all. So here's a quote from his book that I wanted to share today. Buddhism, fully practiced, is free from dogmatism. If you worship something as a dogma, as absolute truth, you are not a good practitioner. You must be totally free, even from the teachings of the Buddha. The teachings of the Buddha are offered as instruments, not as absolute truth. Fascinating that here one of the world's most famous Dharma teachers, Zen masters, is telling us the teachings of the Buddha are offered as instruments, not as absolute truth. When you contemplate that for just a moment, you can see the Buddha lived somewhere around 500 years before the Common Era. Life was different. Technology was different. People's mindsets, education, learning, experiences were different. So the things that he taught us, while they often transcend time, were not intended to be eternal and unchanging, merely a tool to teach us how to overcome suffering. And yet his teachings can be universally true. When he tells us how to live the Noble Eightfold Path, that is not dependent upon time. That does not depend on whether or not I have a TV or a telephone or a computer laptop like I'm talking to you now. That does not depend on whether I have a car, a motorcycle, I ride in an airplane, any of the things of modern life. Having the right view, for example, is important in every situation. And that right view is no view, non-attachment to any type of dogmatic ideas. another quote that he gave us, which I thought was particularly poignant, given the still near constant conversation in Buddhist circles in America about the past election. And that was when Nyat Hanh was teaching us that fear, anger, discrimination, despair, those are all based on wrong perceptions. If you are afraid, it is because you have a wrong perception. If you are angry, it's because you have a wrong perception. If you discriminate between this and that, it's because you have a wrong perception about life, about the Buddha Dharma. Because the Buddha Dharma teaches us a way not to have fear, not to have anger, not to discriminate this from that, and not to have despair. And what is that? It's understanding non-discrimination. It's understanding that the Buddha says we follow the middle way. And the middle way, I'm going to liken again, as I did last week, to equanimity. Equanimity means living a life without attachment or aversion. Right? That's equanimity. A balanced direction in life of non-discrimination. What a great job Nyat Hanh does in translating from the Samyukta Agama, this sutra that I shared with you earlier today, the Sutra on the Middle Way. And so just to summarize it briefly, a monk comes to see the Buddha. The monk's name is Kachayana. He comes to see the Buddha, and he says, you've spoken of right view. Can you tell me the story? What is right view? And the Buddha then began to say, people believe the world one way or the other. It either exists or doesn't exist. The mind either exists or doesn't exist. And he kind of went through this duality of nature that is commonly perceived by people. And the Buddha says, this is all wrong. You have to understand, and then he goes through some great length, the nidanas, the 12 links of dependent arising. And he lists them off and says, these are the things that lead to cause and effect. And understanding that each of those creates a period of where he says, where conditions are favorable for something to happen, conditions are favorable for something to cease. And he explains that in this sutra. But then he goes on to say, but my way is the middle way. And he says this, just briefly. The middle way, the Tathagata avoids two extremes and teaches us the Dharma dwelling in the middle way. The middle way says that this is because that is. This is not because that is not. And then he goes through the 12 nidanas. So again, as Nyat Han said, when we choose a discriminatory mindset, when we choose that this is different from that, when we choose that I am different from her, when we choose to believe that this is a better way than that way, we have wrong perception in an absolute sense. And we should follow and practice non-discrimination, non-attachment, and non-aversion. When we do that, we alleviate suffering of ourselves and others. To teach anything else, to teach fear, to teach despising, to teach anger, to promote fear, to promote anger, to promote discrimination, is not the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha teaches non-suffering and how to not suffer. And we as Mahayanists teach the Bodhisattva way. When we learn how not to suffer, we seek to help others not suffer. We don't seek to help them by teaching discrimination. We seek to help them the same way we learn, which is teaching non-discrimination, non-attachment, and non-aversion. That is how the Buddha teaches. That is what Thich Nhat Hanh is teaching us in this book, Beyond Self. Because when you stop this wrong view of self, you stop suffering. And this wrong view of self is totally tied up in all of these discriminations of I and you, me and him, me and her, separateness, discrimination. It's when the Buddha talks about discrimination, he's not talking about one race discriminating against another race. He's not talking about one religion discriminating against another religion, one gender against another gender. That's not the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha's teaching is differentiation, clinging, attachment to one idea over another, that one is better than another, one is worse than another, and we gain that dogmatic view of something, as I read earlier. So, as Nyat Hanh said, this is the last thing I'll share with you from his book today. The middle way is not caught in pairs of opposites, such as being and non-being, coming and going, birth and death, same and different, exist and does not exist. These are ideas we need to go beyond. Shakespeare said, to be or not to be, that is the question. But in Buddhism, we go beyond the idea of being and not being. Because we have wrong views, we have wrong perceptions. And because of those wrong perceptions, we think that this world is real or that this world is not real. The phrase wrong view itself is not exactly accurate. Relatively speaking, there are right views and wrong views. But if we look more deeply on the absolute sense, we see that all views are wrong views. No view can ever be the truth. It is just the view from one point. That is why it's called a point of view. If we go to another point, we will see things differently and realize that our first view was not entirely right. Buddhism is not a collection of views. It is a practice that helps us eliminate wrong views. the quality of our views can always be improved. From the viewpoint of the ultimate reality, right view is the absence of all views. I hope that gives you something to think about today, this evening. Right view is the absence of all views. That's the middle way. That's the way the Buddha teaches. Okay, we will now go to our next 15 minutes of meditation and then a little chanting after that. So let's see if we can get this working again. There we go. All right. Okay, so that means it's time for some together action, some chanting. And as we do each week, we chant the Heart Sutra. And as I told you last week, I now consider this a practice manual. So think about the Heart Sutra as we chant it, and how can you improve your practice by contemplating these things as we chant them, right? So, and then how can you take that to your meditation practice with you? So let me get to that. I think that will all show up. How's that? Too small. Let me make it bigger. Let's do it that way so everybody can see it. All right. Doesn't quite fit. It's a little bit smaller. Okay. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deeply the Prajna Paramita, perceives that all five skandhas are empty and is safe from all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. That which is form is emptiness. That which is emptiness, form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They do not appear or disappear, are not tainted or pure, do not increase or decrease. Therefore in emptiness, no form, no feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so forth, until no realm of mind consciousness, no ignorance, and also no extinction of it, and so forth, until no old age and death, and also no extinction of them, no suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path, no cognition, also no attainment, with nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva depends on Prajna Paramita, and the mind is no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. Apart from every perverted view, one dwells in nirvana. In the three worlds, all Buddhas depend on Prajna Paramita and attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore know that Prajna Paramita is the great transcendent mantra, is the great bright mantra, is the utmost mantra, is the supreme mantra, which is able to relieve all suffering and is true, not false. So proclaim the Prajna Paramita mantra. Proclaim the mantra which says Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha. Okay. Now we will do our dedication of merit. That doesn't have to be so big on there, does it? Okay, so we'll do it like that. All sentient beings are one seamless body and pass quickly from birth to death. We remember those who cared for us and are gone, those who are ill, those who are at war, who are hungry and who are in pain. May they heal and have peace. We especially dedicate our service to Evelyn, Elaine, Mike, Tom, Mylan. All beings in the 10 directions, subject to the greed, hatred, and delusions of themselves and others. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Maha Prajna Paramita. And now we will do our 4 great vows. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. We vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. We vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. We vow to attain it. Life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes swiftly by and opportunities to awaken are easily lost. Strive to realize your true nature. Do not squander your time by night or day. Thank you, friends, for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Hopefully the meditation helped to make your day a little bit better. It always makes my day better. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. And I wish you a wonderful evening. Good night. Good night from Vietnam.